Neceteros fosso tipia fiteros weekend meteorologicos met Paula.
Allo, clásicos de paratos meteorologi a vale portos. Scorchio. Mini cuniatella interior. Scorchio. Mini cuniatella exterior. Scorchio. Monte Blanco. Scorchio. Costa. Scorchio. Meteorologicus mañana. Oh, Scorchio.
Scorchio.
Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the weekend nip of scotch to our Thursday pub crawl through Westminster. I'm Kenny.
And I'm Alex. Hello, Kenny.
Hello, Alex.
Nice to be spending the weekend with you this weekend.
And the very fine bank holiday weekend it is as well. Have you got plans?
No, I have work. I love the naivety of people wanting to become self-employed because they imagine that being your own boss means you can give yourself time off whenever you want, when in reality being your own boss means
It means you're a bastard to yourself.
you never have time off, basically.
Is the concept of a bank holiday itself just so outdated that we need something different for the,
I
era of the gig
didn't
economy?
even know about it until my other half told me it's a bank holiday.
Isn't it the main reason that people come to Britain? You must go to Britain to get thousands of bank holidays every year.
Makes no difference to me. I mean, the only difference it made is that I thought rather than crowd Sunday with both an episode of Odyssey and Sunday School, it gives me the opportunity to put out the Odyssey episode first thing Monday morning, because that's also part of the long weekend and maybe people will be driving back from wherever they've gone or whatever, so they can listen to that.
What is the next one, by the way?
It's on Sisyphus,
Oh,
condemned to roll a big boulder up a mountain.
the metaphor for our entire existence.
For our entire existence. And it has been the metaphor for our entire existence, you know. It is seen as the metaphor for the human condition, really. It's been picked up by all philosophers, etc. I found this episode so fascinating because even talking to experts, even talking to the classicists, you know, that populate the program in the analysis bit of it, everyone is really familiar with Sisyphus's punishment, but almost nobody knows what the crime was.
Is there a spoiler in this, or do we have to tune in to find out what the crime was? Did it involve cattle?
It didn't, actually. His story does involve some cattle at the early stages.
Oh, there's just such an inevitability about this. Mood to see.
There is a cattle episode in his life, but that's merely to demonstrate how smart he was. So what we don't tend to know about Sisyphus is that he was considered the smartest person ever. So there's a lot of interesting things to find out there because, as I said, all these things, you know, Narcissus, man falls in love with self, or Pandora becomes all about her box or jar. They all become very short ciphers for things. Yeah. But actually, in the full story, there's a lot of meat on that bone.
Shall we crack on then?
Yes, let's.
I'll start with our regular polite reminder to everyone that our Ko-fi page is thus far not subject to any random Trump tariffs. It seems to be about the only thing on the planet that isn't. And that means you can support this rather popular little show for about the price of a regular whiskey. Thank you very much, King Charles and Donald Trump, for making whiskey cheaper for Americans. Well, actually, if you don't drink, you can still support this popular show for the price of a regular whiskey. So teetotalers and alcoholics, all very welcome. Give us your money. Just visit ko-fi.com/quiet-riot-pod to help keep our show and its wonderful community on the road. And I'll stop milking this stupid metaphor.
I mean, whiskey is so predictable.
Look, predictable. I prefer consistent. And I also prefer cask strength, since you asked.
All right, put the glass down and let's decide what's on today's cocktail menu. We have to do Golders Green. It's apparently a whole society issue, or so we're told. So with a little bit of distance from the emotion of the event itself, we will try to traipse into that minefield and probably upset absolutely everyone. But, you know, it is a news story, and we can't keep shying away from news stories just because they are difficult.
That's where trouble lurks,
Yeah,
that's right.
It's kind of where it's important actually to accept you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to annoy some people, but you have to look at these things.
We'll do it as gently as we can. And as we've said, it's a bank holiday weekend in Britain, which means weather is top of the list for discussions practically everywhere. There is a big climate story building for probably the second half of this year and the first half of next year. So I thought we could take a slightly understated approach and ask if this is the year Earth catches fire. But also, given what we're chatting about in the first topic, I thought we should touch on whether that has any implication for our politics, because there may well be a very straightforward link between hot summers and a hotter political climate.
How relentlessly British. Talk about the weather. And that brings us to topic 3, which is your bowel movements. No, I'm only kidding. So talking about Britishness, we'll pop to the pub for topic 3. We'll discuss the latest attack on Angela Rayner for basically having a couple of drinks after work at the strangers bar in Parliament. Also the strangest bar, I think.
Yeah, we can only agree on that. I get the feeling that topic 3 is going to be less of a discussion and more of a sort of rant.
I'll try not to make it so. Let's
Either way, set them up, Alex.
Quiet, Riot.
Every time some terrible event results from prejudice and hatred, one feels a primary duty to comfort, which often overrides honest objectivity. To not behave in that way seems callous. So the problem with only ever discussing an issue in the context of terrible events is that one never gets any further or deeper into it than comforting words. We live in an age that contains immense complexity but demands binary signaling in primary colors. And the net result is that people fall into patterns of not saying what they really think, certainly not all of what they really think. And that breeds a kind of resentment that only increases the prejudice. So in full knowledge that we will probably be damned for doing so, we will try to discuss the Golders Green attack this week the same way we would any news story, by prioritizing the facts and trying to give an honest assessment of them. Radical, I know. Kenny, what actually happened?
Well, it started with the stabbing. I suppose we should say at the beginning a man's been arrested, so we have to be careful about what we say. But 2 Jewish men were stabbed in Golders Green, which is in North London, for those of you who don't know the capital as well as others. Police then said, look, it's a terrorist incident, and 2 men were taken to hospital. Right. Fast forward, not very many minutes at all, and social media absolutely fills up with phone clips, CCTV footage, all sorts of other imagery, showing the suspect at various points approaching a bus stop, allegedly attacking a man waiting there. And then the videos that emerged of the suspect being brought down by police, tasered, and then getting what used to be called a shoeing, getting a kicking from the police while they are trying to disarm him. There's another member of the public involved with that. You can hear the police shouting, drop the knife. But it's the fact that they continue to kick him while he's on the ground that starts to wind people up. At that point, Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, reposts on social media a video that's critical of the police and their approach to disarming the victim. And from that point on, everything becomes super political. There is allegation, counter-allegation, and in the end, Polanski himself holds his hands up and says, yeah, I called this one wrong. This wasn't the right approach to take, and says he wants to meet with the commissioner of the Met Police to put his position more clearly. So at this point, then the legal system sort of moves in, and the accused appears in court charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Okay, now, I don't know about you, Alex, but I had to do a double take.
We were chatting about that before we recorded, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because we consume a lot of news, right? We are professional, but also compulsive news watchers.
Geeks, yeah.
And we follow social media. We've watched hours and hours of coverage on this over several days. And I hadn't heard about a 3rd alleged victim until I saw that he'd been charged with 3 counts of murder or attempted murder. And I thought, was there someone else that he menaced or, tried to stab but didn't make contact on the scene? What was the actual third one, Kenny?
It was an attack on a Muslim man. More details than that, I'm kind of nervous to share because he's now appeared in court. What we can say with confidence is that for whatever reason, initially, the story that most people saw was that he'd been involved in stabbing 2 people. Now we know that there's a third allegation. And in my world of newspapers back in the day, a headline that involved 3 attacks would always trump a headline that involved 2 attacks. When it comes to this sort of incident, whether you like it or not, bigger is always better in headline terms. And I was more bemused than anything else. I found myself having to go back and double check and triple check what I'd read earlier just to make sure it wasn't me that had misinterpreted what was going on. So I don't know. I don't know. Instinctively, my spidey senses are tingling.
Look, what we can do is share the public record, as it were, that was read out in court. Essa Suleiman, who is the alleged perpetrator, he's 45, and he's accused of attacking Shloime Rand, 34, Moshe Shine, 76, that's in the Golders Green neighborhood, and then also alleged to have attempted to murder a man called Ismail Hussein in a knife attack at Hussein's flat in Southwark, South London, earlier that same day. That's what's been read out as the charge in court, and we can share that. But it is interesting, I think, and speaks to something going on under the surface that neither of us, after hours and hours of watching things about this story, knew of the third attack.
No. I mean, the things that we did know, we know that he was born in Somalia, but the mainstream media outlets were very careful to say that he was born in Somalia, but he came to the UK lawfully as a child and was now a British citizen. In the real world, it's quite clear what sort of narrative that information plays into as well. I get the uncomfortable feeling that subconsciously we're now at a stage where so much of what we're reading, even in the mainstream media, is influenced by the sort of the subconscious environment that media and the rest of us operate in as well. And it's a deeply uncomfortable feeling as well. I don't know what your views on it are, but I wasn't happy with it, let's put it like that.
Look, people can hold 2 views at the same time. It's never this or that. The attack in North London is perfectly capable of being fueled by anti-Semitism. It's a horrific thing to have happened. And separately, that the topic of the rising spate of anti-Semitism or pure Jew hatred is something that we're seeing across the world. Certainly here in the UK, we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, and it is worth discussing. But to go a step further, and in order to facilitate that discussion, slightly massage this into a purer version, perhaps, of what it was, does make me very uncomfortable.
I mean, it's natural process of media to distill. That's effectively one of the key elements of any proper media outlet, is to take big stories, big events, and distill them into bite size, and then longer, more understandable chunks of information. But that distillation process is absolutely central. And it can affect the tone of coverage. It certainly has an effect on the volume of discussion around events such as this. I mean, with that in mind, do you think, given that this involved the alleged stabbing of, we now know, 3 people, do you think everything that's happened actually, in tone and volume terms, is proportionate to the events? And, is there a cumulative effect here?
Yeah, I think the cumulative effect is the only thing that can sort of explain the tone and volume, right? If you look at this thing on its own, I don't want to minimize it because it was a horrible, horrible thing that happened and it should never happen. In a civilized, tolerant country, people should be free to express their identity without fearing they're going to be stabbed for it. I mean, this is like really basic fucking stuff. I shouldn't expect violence if I go out in public holding my partner's hand. And exactly the same thing applies to someone going out wearing a skull cap. They shouldn't be violently attacked simply for being themselves, because there is a sense out there that they are somehow associated with, complicit to a whole other bunch of stuff that's going on. That is the essence of prejudice, isn't it? The essence
Absolutely.
of prejudice is to take a thing and apply it to everyone in a group. All of that is true, but at the same time, I can't help but feel that if someone had been on a desert island for the last week and simply heard 1 hour of 24-hour news today, Saturday, they would come away with the impression that a number of people had died and this was some major terrorist event, rather than a horrific, hateful, violent, attempted murder of 3 people.
I mean, it's not the first time that we've discussed events like this, or events that are adjacent to this sort of happening. And it feels that we're in that part of the news cycle where these events are becoming more common, and you have the fear of copycat crimes and all of that stuff that we've discussed before. Politicians know just as well as you and I know how weighted and how important their words are when
Of
it
course.
comes to
Absolutely.
just to reacting in the right way. How can politicians navigate events like this in this day and age, in the age of social media?
Well, let's have a little listen to Starmer visiting the community where this happened. The same thing happened to the MP who appeared there earlier that day. The same thing happened, of course, in Manchester. David Lammy was there, Shabana Mahmood visited. And there seems to now be a new fashion for demanding that politicians turn up on the site of a terrible event so they can be booed. It feels like the expression of an understandable feeling, but I'm not sure it's necessarily constructive to do. It's almost our version of the stocks, you know, that's what it feels like. If you want politicians to do something about something, you have to leave them at least one path to a win scenario. You can't block every exit and make them damned whatever they do, because then, quite understandably, they do nothing.
Yeah.
If there is literally no way of dealing with this that would even go some way to satisfying the community involved, then what is there to do? And I find that really difficult because you have, at the moment, the people involved were a Jewish MP and a prime minister with a Jewish wife and Jewish children, who was reviled, by the way, by the very same press for wanting to take Friday evenings off with his wife so they could celebrate her holiday. All this is boosting, on the other side, someone who used to go up to Jewish people in college and make hissing sounds at them and saying, gas them all.
Yeah.
I understand the anger and hurt felt by the community, but there also needs to be a little bit of strategy and tactics in making this better, in getting what you want as a community. And I'm not sure at the moment, I am not sure what at least the British Jews who are represented in news programs, who are certainly not all British Jews, because the views I hear on the news are not congruent to the views I hear from liberal Jewish friends. That slice of people expressing themselves on programs, and I don't get what it is that they want from the government other than the government to fall.
Well, that's the core point, isn't it? Yeah, because there are two groups of people. You know, if we wanted to divide it into two very simple groups of people, when the Prime Minister turns up, there will be a core group of people who presumably are very close to what's going on socially. But there's also going to be another group of people who will turn up and boo and hiss whenever a politician turns up, regardless of why that politician is there. And as you've said, that's problematic from the point of view of people wanting politicians actually to have a route to doing something positive. But I think it also devalues the importance of the core issue, whatever that issue may be. Now, in this case, it's the issue of anti-Semitism in this country and globally. And yet this knee-jerk reaction by a particular group of people, and, this part of me would probably be in that group of people sometimes, going, yeah, he's turned up or she's turned up. I don't like what they stand for in general. I'm going to boo them anyway.
I'm speaking from a very pro-Jewish point of view. I consider anti-Semitism to be one of the worst, one of the most persistent and deep-rooted forms of prejudice that there has ever existed, and it's been around for millennia, which is why I want there to be a logic, a strategy to what is going on. And I do understand the instant anger and hurt being felt. It's not that I don't understand it. But what is the long-term goal here? If the long-term goal is just to bring down Starmer, then you are making this into an issue that is not a practical one, but a political one. Because, effectively, the criticism is based on the notion that somehow a prime minister or anyone in charge of the country can prevent anyone from coming to any harm, which is not something that anyone can achieve.
No.
Keir Starmer doesn't have the funds to put the army on the streets of North London, and neither would North London want that.
No, that's right.
So bad things will happen. Because the question is, systemically, are we in an environment that is allowing them to happen? And I have a very open mind on that. I think there are things that are going on which systemically encourage that kind of anti-Jewish sentiment. And there are other things which are slightly weaponized, maybe, and have to do more with criticism of Israel and somehow conflating that with anti-Semitism, which is something that Netanyahu himself does very, very regularly. Netanyahu himself claims that he asks for Jewish people everywhere in the world. And Netanyahu himself responds to any criticism of his government with claims of anti-Semitism. And so I think there is a trap there. There is a trap there that if you make it a no-win situation for politicians, if you make it a no-win situation for people who want to quite rightly protest what is going on in Palestine, if you get to a stage where these protests are banned and there's loads more police presence in the street, you are moving towards a more authoritarian, less liberal society. And you have to stop and think, is that actually what I want?
Quiet, Riot.
Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Quiet, Riot.
Well, that takes us on to the next point that we should discuss, really, because politically this story has moved incredibly quickly over the last few days. And yesterday, that Saturday morning, Starmer spent his Saturday morning talking to the Today programme, and he hinted that some pro-Palestinian protests may have to be banned. Now, it's only 10 months since Palestinian action itself was proscribed. That was a decision that caused all sorts of political chaos. Let's just listen to what he said.
When you hear some of those chants, globalise the Intifada would be the one that I would pick out, then clearly there should be tough action in relation to that. Now, that's not a discussion that has only been had this week in response to this awful incident. That is a discussion we've been having with the police for some time. In relation to the repeated nature of the marches, many people in the Jewish community have said to me, it's the repeat nature, it's the cumulative effect. Now, I accept that, which is why we intend to deal with cumulative effects. We are having a
moratorium, because there's been a call, as you know, from your independent advisor on terrorism, Jonathan Hall. He says it's time for a moratorium on protests.
I think it's time to look across the board at protests and the cumulative effect. I think it's time for, I would say, some people protesting to just reflect on what the Jewish community is going through and the overall impact that this is having. And that's why I say...
You sound like a man, Prime Minister, who's not there yet. You've got to take advice, you've got to consult. You are ready to say some of these marches, some of these protests need to stop altogether.
We need to look at what further powers we can take.
All right, Alex, what do you think of that as a response?
It depends what he means, right? If he means introducing new legislation, then I'd have to look at that legislation, what it's trying to achieve and how it's phrasing it. I think the right to protest has already been quite severely curtailed in this country, both in the first couple of years of this government and certainly in the previous 5 or 6 years by the previous Conservative administrations, who brought in loads of illiberal laws. There is a flip side to it, which could trigger actually a bigger wave of protests simply by attempting to ban them, and that is also something that I think the government has to think of. There is a flip side, which says, if you ban those protests, what about Tommy Robinson marches? You know, because they make a lot of people feel unsafe in our capital. And no one is talking about that. No one is talking about whether a woman in a hijab feels free to go to the corner shop while one of those marches is going on through London, which is an equally valid thing to discuss, right? So somehow there needs to be a balance between breaking the circular nature of this protest, counter-protest thing without basically busting our society's liberal values. It's not an easy thing, is it?
No, and it was ever thus. Certainly in my lifetime, this hasn't changed at all. The tribal nature of humans is very, very difficult to deal with. And particularly when you put groups of people together and you get that adrenaline, you get this idea that we're all in a club together and there's us and there's them. And there's always an us and there's always a them. And there's always somebody somewhere in the background weaponizing that and sticking a crowbar in and making that division ever, ever wider. And in the end, it devalues society for every one of us. You know, I think that's what really, really frustrates me more than anything else, is that every single person, whether they take what's going on seriously or not, their society is being devalued and made less of a good place in which to exist by these sort of events and by the sort of people that encourage these events as well.
So basically, to come to a kind of conclusion, I don't devalue anyone's feelings on this. I understand why people are feeling scared. That fear is entirely legitimate in the current environment. But there needs to be a kind of logic and structure to what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that has to take into account the fact that a liberal society that allows dissent is vital in a democracy. It has to take account of the fact that no one can protect everyone from everything, unless you're living in some actual totalitarian dystopia. And it has to take account of the fact that there is also a global context to this that is feeding into this debate. And unless people kind of take the heat out of it, take the politics out of it, and think practically, what is it we want? Like, what is it this community wants the government to do? Is it genuinely that they want the government to prescribe all protests that object to the current Israeli government's treatment of Palestine? Is that something that will increase the safety of Jewish people in the UK? My instinct is it will do the opposite. It will bury that underground, and instead of educating, instead of bringing communities together, it will actually divide further. I'm not the person to tell people what to do about this. I am as I said, an ally. I am someone who has always tried to understand issues of anti-Semitism, but I am not a Jew. And so it's not up to me to advocate one thing or another. But I do note that there doesn't seem to be a concerted, logical structure to what is being demanded here. It just seems to be angry people saying, do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that takes us very far in any direction.
Quiet riot.
For now, these hot days is the mad blood stirring. Benvolio's words foretell coming violence in Romeo and Juliet, and they put Verona's oppressive summer heat front and centre in the unfolding drama. Now, hot summers and heated exchanges have long been linked anecdotally, and of late, scientists have been telling us that there's a very good chance that we're going to have an extremely warm summer. Possibly this year, possibly next, possibly both, as the Earth enters a particularly warm phase. Now, given what we've just been discussing about the politics of protest, should this concern us? What's the evidence that the world is getting toasty this year? And if it's going to be a scorcher, is there anything at all to suggest that this makes violence in the streets more likely? Or are we all going simply to be cuddling up to an aircon unit and mainlining ice cubes?
Anyone want a recap, or did you get it?
We got it, but what the hell do we do with it?
I'm not up on my sci-fi, so we're orbiting towards the sun. Well, how many billion light years...
That's true. I'd say there's about 4 months.
Before what?
Before there's a delightful smell in the universe of charcoaled mankind.
You really mean 4 months?
According to the temperature rises in the last few weeks, yes.
Is that what we say in tomorrow's paper?
Tomorrow we report the news, the facts. We leave prophecy to the street corner cranks. Bill, you and Sandy, start arranging interviews with top scientists, Cockcroft, Penny. Right. If you can get a call through to Calcutta, Haldane might break silence. Okay. Pete, you get busy on the no water angle. Everything affected, sanitation, electricity, power plants, even down to car radiators.
Well,
and keep the tone of the paper reasonably optimistic, understand? It's going to be all right. That's it.
Okay, Kenny, hit me with the science on this. Is it going to be a hot year, hotter than usual? Is it going to be hot as in stay indoors, or hot as in, get some lollies and put on your budgie smugglers?
Never, ever break out the budgie smugglers. Well, look, before Christmas, the Met Office in Britain was already predicting that this was going to be a warm one. The previous records tend to date from 2024, not that long ago. Maybe not as quite as warm as that, but still a warm one. So they forecast that the average global temperature was going to be about just under 1.5 degrees above the baseline figure. Now, the baseline figure is the temperature between 1850 and 1900, because that's when measurements first started being recorded. That by itself would make 2026 the fourth year in succession that temperatures will have reached at least 1.4 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Now, there's even more up-to-date information, which is even more alarming. The EU's Copernicus project, now that's basically Europe's eyes on the planet. They put out these figures just 2 or 3 weeks ago. They said that March was the fourth warmest March globally since records began, that it was 0.5 degree warmer than the average, get this, in 1990 to 2020. So that's 0.5 degree warmer since I was a teenager in my early 20s, not that long ago. And it was almost 1.5 degrees above that 1850, 1900 average that's used to define the pre-industrial level. So the stats were really quite disturbing. The average temperature over European land was the second warmest on record. It was 2.27 degrees above the 1991 to 2020 average. Again, that very recent average. Average sea surface temperatures, second highest value ever recorded for the month. And much of continental Europe, in terms of sort of things that we would all understand, well, it was drier than average. Not everywhere, though. Iceland, parts of Scotland, Scandinavia, parts of the Mediterranean, even the Caucasus, they were wetter than average. Heavy precipitation, which is often associated with the transit of storms, caused flooding. So again, you've got these extremes starting to come together. It's not just that it's super dry and super hot everywhere, it's extreme weather conditions.
No, of course, because, super dry and super hot somewhere means, more evaporation, more clouds elsewhere. Yeah, so
exactly
those things are obviously always linked.
And we're seeing sort of more evidence that the oceans are getting very warm this year. Scientists in general are very confident that the second half of this year is pretty much certain to see the start of a substantial El Niño. That's the sort of the natural climate phase when warm water spreads out across the equator, spreads out across the Pacific, equatorial or not. Eventually, that sort of heats the entire planet. Some of the models project that it's going to be a super El Niño, perhaps the strongest ever. There is still some scientific debate about this, but the models are all starting to converge in a way that suggests it's definitely going to be a toasty one. So it could be 2027 before the full force is felt, but the second half of this year is already causing concern. So it could be a tough year, second half, but there could be worse to come.
Link that to politics, protests, public disorder. What happened the last time Britain had a scorching summer? Were there signs of any of those things?
The folk memory of a scorching summer in Britain inevitably goes to 1976. Seems a long time ago, but it's not. Even I remember it. And there were standpipes, there were parched fields, crops were wrecked, the tarmac started to melt, and there was a minister for drought appointed, because British politics occasionally achieves the purity of a TV sitcom, basically. The Met Office has said that 1976 was sunnier and drier than 2025, but 2025 had more persistent warmth, especially at night. And what's probably most important is that 76 no longer sits alone. 2025 was the warmest summer on record, and all 5 of the warmest UK summers have occurred since 2000. The pattern's there.
And what about public disorder? Is there a link there? I mean, obviously there's a link there because I guess if you organize a protest, more people will turn up if it's a lovely if it's a lovely day out than if it's freezing and pouring down with rain. That much is clear. But is there a real link with people's, I guess, tempers running hotter?
Well, heat doesn't sort of magically turn citizens into brick-throwing goblins. It's not quite as straightforward as that, but the point you make is absolutely right. If it's sunny outside, go and have a pint, watch TV a little bit, and then just go and have a march and a bit of a punch-up. But beyond the sort of cartoon level, there have been scientific studies into this. There was a 2024 review that did find evidence linking elevated temperatures and especially violent crime. And then last year, there was another review which found that civil wars and riots as well, they were linked to temperature increases. They weren't huge figures. They estimated that each 1 degree rise in ambient temperature was associated with kind of a 1.6% increase in violence. But, they might seem like small percentages, but in a large population, that can have nasty consequences, particularly when the political temperature is rising both locally and globally as well. So, it's not just sun comes out, rat begins. It's, heat worsens your sleep, raises stress, makes people more irritable as well. Alcohol consumption goes up. We're back to drink again. Crowd density, as you've said, is much likely to be higher. Policing pressure grows, not just because of the demonstrations, because, police are out there dealing with traffic jams and all the other things that happen when everybody goes onto the streets. Transport failure, food starts to get expensive, water runs out. Heat isn't the match, but it really is the dry grass that you set fire to.
And yet, Arab Spring, those protests started actually in the dead of winter, in late December in Egypt, and then spread in the early months of the next year. And that's probably because the summers in those regions are too hot.
Yes, that's right.
To
There's a
go
tipping
out,
point.
Yeah. And so actually, what you're talking about is the weather being ideal for being outside, effectively, encourages more people to go out rather than pure heat.
If you want to have no riots in the streets, you fast forward to some sort of Mad Max-esque dystopia where it's literally too hot to go out and throw rocks around.
And then you just have to confine your anger to the Thunderdome.
Quiet Riot. Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Quiet Riot.
You're the one who has views on politicians much more than I do and their ability to change things and the pressures they're on. But do you in your heart of hearts think that there's anything politicians can do about this sort of thing? Because I do.
A little bit, actually. I'm not sure that Britain has adjusted to the idea that it's a slightly hotter country now. And so, well, it's true. I mean, in Greece, you will have a sort of cooler part of the year daily schedule and then a hotter part of the year daily schedule. So people like civil servants, banks, places like that, will open much, much earlier in the day in the summer. They will then basically close 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but they will start at 7. So people will do a shorter day to allow them to go indoors, have a bit of a siesta in the afternoon, because as you said, one of the problems with very hot climate is that you sleep less at night. You really do have to wait until it's got a bit cooler, and that can often be like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning before you can sleep. So people do break up their sleep and have more of a nap culture in the afternoon. So there is something, I guess, you could do about that. You could look at the kind of hours that warmer countries have found work better in the summer for decades now, because they kind of know what they're doing, and look maybe at the material you're using for buildings, because it feels to me like this kind of thin brick is not ideal, again, for hot temperatures.
Nothing wrong with a good British oven.
And loads of green helps. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Houses in which the air that comes in is filtered by trees outside are quite a bit cooler than not. So all those things are things that politicians could do. But again, to echo what we were talking about in the first part of this episode, politicians can't shelter you from everything. They can't prevent the weather. And it feels like we are in a kind of age where people might start to get angry with why Starmer hasn't done more for the summer to be a bit cooler and water not to run out. No, honestly, we are in that territory. I can actually see that as an item on GB News.
Boris Johnson will be penning 2 columns as we speak. One about why has Starmer made summer so crap, and one about why has Starmer made summer so bloody hot.
Quiet, Riot.
I saw Goody Osborne last night with the devil. I saw Bridget Bishop last night with the devil. I saw Angela Rayner last night in the Strangers Bar. So some of what I just read out is part of the iconic outburst at the witch trial in Miller's play, The Crucible. Some of it is a Daily Mail headline to a story by Dan Hodges. What is it about Angela Rayner that triggers these right-wing pundits to such an extreme extent? And does that make her less suitable as a potential Labour leader and Prime Minister, or more so? Kenny, before I launch into my sermon...
Oh, save me!
What is your view?
I knew you were going to have a view on this, and I knew it was going to be sermon-esque. Look, my view on this can really be summed up with 2 other individuals in politics who have been loosely associated with the devil's juice. Diane Abbott, we know what happened to her when somebody clocked her having a sneaky tin of G&T on the underground. And Boris Johnson, who went to Italy without his handlers and got pissed with the Russians and is now paid £1 million a year to moan about everything else in the Daily Mail.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially sums up my view. What we have is hypocrisy. I really can't be doing with hypocrisy. And of course, political machinations in which our front page is editorialized rather than presenting news. I kind of shook my head and thought, Angela, if you do enjoy a pint and you do get a bit squiffy in Strangers Bar, this is what's going to happen whether we like it or not. So I had a little rage, and then I also thought, do you know what, though? There's a whole group of people who are going to say, fair play to her. It makes her more like somebody that I might actually want to vote for, not less.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, I'm braced.
I just find it interesting. I really do find it interesting. That piece by Dan Hodges, and there were pieces in all the papers about this. The short story is Angela Rayner had a couple of pints in the Strangers Bar after work and bumped into a door at some point. And this has been weaved into a kind of, legless falling over, smashed out of her face. And this is not unusual for her, which is why she must never be Prime Minister. And I find that interesting for several reasons. First of all, because actually, he mentions Johnson. He mentions also Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
He mentions Winston Churchill, as if to say, look, I don't mind politicians having a bit of a drink. And it's like, well, you kind of only mentioned 3 posh white guys, though.
Yeah, there was a pattern there.
Yeah, so is it maybe that you don't mind some politicians having a drink? The online version of the article is hilarious in that every paragraph is punctuated by a photo of Angela Rayner with some kind of beverage in her hand. And then another paragraph, and then another photo of Angela Rayner with a glass of wine, and then another photo of Angela Rayner with having a pint. She's not drunk in any of them. It's just photo opportunities in the same way that Nigel Farage is never pictured without a pint of bitter in his hand. But in his case, this is seen as something that makes him ordinary, blokey, brings him closer to the voter. It's a sort of testament to his realness. While in her case, it's something that makes her unreliable, dangerous, unladylike, etc. One of the dumbest arguments ever committed to Page, where Dan Hodges writes, and I quote, "Few voters will have a problem with a politician who enjoys a drink, or even one who in private gets drunk. Winston Churchill won a world war on a diet of brandy, port, and Pol Roger." And then he says, but there is both a time and a place. And a Monday night in a busy parliamentary bar, at the moment when you are trying to convince your colleagues you are the person to be entrusted with Britain's nuclear launch codes.
Oh, that escalated, didn't it?
I know. Well, first of all, that's not how nuclear weapons in Britain work. British prime ministers don't have nuclear launch codes. Let's put aside Winston Churchill winning a world war by himself. Okay, putting that to one side, the notion that you could have the nuclear codes, but only if you get drunk in private like Churchill did. I find that genuinely one of the most baffling 2 sentences that anyone has put next to each other. Like, okay, be drunk out of your skull, but have the decency to do it in private. Because otherwise, how can we trust you with the nuclear codes? Unless you're hiding.
I mean, there's a very serious issue. We want to keep it light, but Westminster, politicians and journalists, and lots of other people in that environment, there's a very, very serious alcohol abuse problem there. There always has been. And the fact that there is subsidised alcohol still available on the Westminster estate only adds to matters.
But all the same papers were raging last week when Hannah Spencer, the new Green Party MP, suggested there shouldn't be alcohol in the parliamentary estate. They were all like, it's our British right to get drunk after work. And then literally the week after, when they see a woman Labour MP having a couple of drinks, they're like, how dare you, madam, be so unladylike in public? And part of me senses that this is not just about sexism, although it is a lot about sexism.
Well, yes.
But it's also class. They resent her drinking pints. Like, that much is clear. If she was holding some delicate glass of sherry in her hand, there would be less of an outcry. And also, I don't know, there's something dangerous about Rayner. Maybe it's the fact she's red-headed. The red hair has always been associated with witchiness.
Quiet, Riot. Quiet, Riot.
There is something in there. Do you remember the stories about her flashing the Prime Minister during PMQs?
Growlergate, yes. Never to be forgotten.
Sort of put him off. And do you remember Dominic Raab winking at her that disgusting way? And then when she was in a nice dress holding a glass of champagne in Glyndebourne, the same newspapers put out that papped picture and basically suggested she should stay in her lane. Like, what is this working class woman doing in Glyndebourne drinking fizzy? So there is genuinely no winning for her, is there?
There's not. And yet there are people who have been immense politicians who have really battled very long and hard against alcoholism.
Yeah.
And, I don't like to raise names, but my favourite politician, Charles Kennedy, is no
Charlie
longer with
Kennedy,
us.
I mean, famously.
And it was known. It was known in Westminster. Of course it was. And it was known by the journalists. Of course it was, because a lot of the time they were the ones getting smashed with him. But his was the acceptable face of alcoholism. He was the ruddy-faced, ginger-haired Scottish person, went to the same school as me, the same bog-standard comprehensive, as you'd call it. And his journey was cut short very abruptly because there was a genuine problem with his drinking. But of course, nobody stepped in meaningfully to help him, to save him. They were quite willing to step in, though, and throw brickbats at Angela Rayner, for simply having the temerity to sit down and have a pint or two and get squiffy. It's dreadfully unserious, isn't it, our media? It really is.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting that you mentioned the schooling and class issue, which is, of course, a big part of this. But have a little listen to what Alison Pearson had to say.
I really object to privately educated people admiring Angela Rayner as some sort of, some sort of working class hero. Because the working class heroes I grew up alongside, I was born in a council house, were the kids who, against the odds, tried to work hard in classrooms where the Angelas were in the back row, putting the makeup on, talking about who they were shagging, and generally causing chaos and a mess for those of us who were trying to work and better ourselves. So I think that something in me died the day that Jeremy Corbyn made Angela Rayner with her nurse NVQ1 qualification, left school pregnant, no other qualifications, and he made her the shadow education secretary, which I thought was a huge insult to all the kids who did their homework, did their best, tried to get the best grades they could, and went on to make something of themselves.
There are assumptions and prejudices on display there that are not even hidden. They are explicit. Resent her for having been the sort of person in school that would have sat in the back of the class and disrupted. What the fuck are you talking about?
Just often one.
Are you literally just making stuff up about putting Angela Rayner in a sort of role that someone you disliked in school was, to make some kind of argument that well-educated people should not be defending her because she got pregnant quite early on and didn't get A-levels? Is that really what you're saying? That as another woman with a working class background, you're going to throw rocks at Angela Rayner because she didn't make it to university like you did? Is that really what we're saying here? I mean
there's two things you see. One, Rayner is less of a person than I am, which is problematic in itself. And do you know what? I've completely forgotten the second thing that was just saying because it made me so angry. It was just looking at it going, oh, really? Really, is that all you've got? That she behaves differently to me, therefore she must be a bad person?
Well, she didn't, though. Some girl at her school did. That's the weirder thing. She's just conflating Angela Rayner with the sort of person that used to annoy her at school. And it's like, who fucking cares?
Still gets her clicks, doesn't it? Gets her lots and lots of clicks, which is what it's all about ultimately, isn't it?
No, she's not getting any clicks from me because I saw the video someone else had grabbed it, basically.
Your purity remains untouched and unsullied.
No, I mean, but that is an important thing to say, because I do find it weird when people share the link directly to a clickbaity thing that they're outraged about. And it's like, why are you sharing it?
I know, don't.
Like, why aren't you taking screen grabs or pointing to an archived link or grabbing the video or, suggesting a way in which they don't get the reward? So maybe that can be a bit of a call to action for listeners to always, when they sense that the point of the outrage is to get clicks, don't reward that with clicks. Find a way to share and make your points, not giving them the advertising revenue, I guess.
As a bonus, on the big social media platforms, if you share a link, your tweet, your post will get downgraded because the social media platforms don't like you sharing links that take people out of that social media environment. So fewer people will see your post. So there's a double reason not to do it. Do the screen grab. Do the sensible thing. Stay clean. Yeah. Keep that timeline pristine.
Yeah, or in some platforms like Facebook, quote the whole piece.
Yeah.
Just grab the whole thing and paste it in, because that will probably get you the maximum engagement. The final question. I ask this because there are much more controversial figures in the left of politics to pick on. This relentless focus on Angela Rayner, it does imply there's a second ingredient in the mix, right? They see the idea of her in power as not altogether impossible. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. So they think it's possible she might actually get there. So for us looking at that situation, does the fact that Rayner triggers opposition figures in the media to that extent make us a bit less rigorous in assessing her suitability to lead the country. I'm getting towards a situation where we support Angela Rayner just to trigger Dan Hodges, just to see what happens to the Express if she becomes Prime Minister.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the shits and giggles models of political engagement in the United Kingdom. I'm all for it.
I mean, they've been doing it to us for decades.
Completely. One of the biggest, no, let me rephrase that. The biggest problem that we have in politics in this country is the lack of engagement from people. I bang on about it when we talk about Scottish politics, what they call the scunner factor, where people will vote for either nobody or anybody who's willing to burn the whole thing down. Rayner at least divides opinion. People have opinions on her, whether they're good or bad. And that sort of engagement factor, I welcome it. You know, I really do welcome it. And whether one is a fan of Rayner and whether one is a fan of the fact that she likes a jar on Friday night in Westminster or not, the fact that she's actually interesting, as well as in the background, doing stuff and delivering things politically as well. Not that we ever hear very much about that.
Because she did by all accounts very well in the housing.
You know, she's a capable operator. And that sounds so condescending, doesn't it? Of course she's a blooming capable operator. You know, listen to me.
Yeah.
Condescending to Angela Rayner. I mean, who the hell am I to grade her on her abilities? But I do think the fact that she divides opinion is a positive, not a negative.
Quiet, Riot.
All right, that's all, folks, for another Sunday School. Run the end credits, clean up the spilled popcorn, and thank you, Alex, for putting up with me today.
Always a chore, never a pleasure. Thank you out there for your company this bank holiday weekend, and I hope the weather either makes you smile or gives you something exceptionally British to complain about. Just don't forget there is more podcast action from our stable thanks to Podyssey and Behind the Lines. You are never alone with us.
We will be back on Thursday sporting the traditional British May combination of sunburn and dry rot. Until then, please do enjoy the rest of this extended weekend and keep on rioting. And remember, it's okay to do it quietly, whatever the weather.
We love, love, love you all. Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simone Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
I have to edit you. I have to sit there and take out all the ums and ahs. So
it's a privilege. It's a privilege. It's not a chore. It's a privilege.
All right.
Andreou.
Cut all of this.
We'll be back on Thursday.
Let me do the final.
It's still going on.